right, welcome to the SSAA Victoria Podcast. I'm Barry Howlett, Communications Manager with SSAA Victoria. To my left, I have David Laird,
the Hunting Development Manager. So hello, Baz. Hello, Daryl. Good to be here again. We're going to hit those million subscribers this time.
Million.
Joe Rogan, watch out. And to my right, and it will now become self-explanatory why I don't introduce people by title, is Daryl Snowden.
Hi, I'm the, Programs and Training Manager at SSAA Victoria. And true Joe Rogan fashion, we're in a secret location that we can't announce.
Oh, there you go. So a bit to cover on the podcast today. It's been quite a few months since I've had Dave and Daryl in the studio with me. I've been flying solo with a couple of guests. They've all been very anxious to get back on and in their rightful place. So
we've been anxious, or the listeners have been anxious?
The sheer volume of phone calls coming into the office about it's overwhelming, Savita.
As long as you're keeping the show rolling, Barry, and we can continue going hunting and doing what we do, it's all good.
It's all good. So on the show today, we've got Steve Hill from Hunters4Hope in New Zealand, which we'll get to an interview with Steve soon, and really looking forward to that. They've got a fascinating story to tell about what they're doing and connecting wild shot game with people who really need the protein. It's an awesome thing that they're able to pull off just over the other side of the Tasman. Before that, we'll have a chat about a few of the things that have been going on around the traps, both with SSAA and with hunting and shooting in Victoria more broadly. So fair bit to cover. We've got the 2025 duck and quail seasons have been run and won, for want of a better term. We've had some new areas being earmarked for deer hunting and some pretty silly attacks on that by the Green Lobby. We've got some big news out of the UK about silencers and a renewed push for shooters to be able to use them over here. We've got the Victorian government's machete ban and a bit of overreach from that into the hunting and shooting world. We've got our shooting and hunting organisations coming together, looking ahead to the 2026 Victorian state election. So some positive forward-looking stuff there. We've got a hog deer poacher getting a serve of justice dished up to him. A good news story on that. We've got the anti-gunners going full-on attacking firearm owners in the last month or two, and some pushback we've been providing on that. We've had a strong statement from Minister Demopoulos about the Great Forest National Park proposal. That's all very positive news. We've had some more negative news about wild dog baiting programs. We've had a reprieve for the fox bounty. And to top it all off, there's a bit of a brouhaha within SSAA at a national level that we'll touch on as well. So
this is the program for the rest of the year's podcast, or today?
Well, it's just, this is how busy we've been in the last couple of months. Yeah, there's a lot to cover.
How many podcasts are we doing?
Let's see, it might be a two-parter, but we'll dive right into it. 2025 duck and quail seasons. You two gents were heavily involved. Dave and I went up to the opening, stayed in Kerrang, but all the opening action was at Lake Bort, and it all went fairly well. From a hunter perspective, Dave narked on probably the first protester of the year, so he was very pleased with himself with
Absolutely. He was illegally flying a drone, and it was reported to the appropriate authorities, and they took action. So that was a nice one on that first morning.
First scalp before a shot had been fired. We had a protester booked for illegally flying a drone. Daryl, you went and did something novel on duck opening.
Yeah, I took the week off and I went hunting. It was much more enjoyable than trying to ping people flying drones in public wetlands. But no, I was on a large public wetland in Victoria, so it's awesome. It was really good to get out there.
Your boat ran all right?
Boat ran perfectly, mate.
That's good.
Everything went well. No, I hunted with my good friends up around the Ngambia area, so it was great. We avoided the bird flu closures only just. Had to modify some of our camps and where we hunted and camped. But yeah, no, it was fantastic. Great week. Until Friday when it poured rain and we all kind of snuck home for a night before we got into the weekend.
Excellent. And all in Victoria, you didn't cross over into South Australia this year?
No, I hung around in Victoria this year. I have been known to spend a lot of time in South Australia, but this year we decided to hang around and we just hunted Victoria. That with my son's just started university, so he's struggling to get time off. But we did manage to sneak a week off and go over to New Zealand. So
excellent.
We didn't get to South Australia, but we did get over to New Zealand for a week, so it's fabulous.
Yeah, well, we're probably fortunate we had the 9-bird daily bag limit, so it was worth hanging around in Victoria this year. Plenty of birds around.
Adaptive harvest management delivered.
Yeah, look, some really good results there. It's only the start of it, and it will adapt and as the data comes in. But it's an objective way to set the season, the bag limits. So no, really happy with that.
It's easy to sell to hunters when it spits out 9.
Well, exactly, and that's going to be the challenge over the next sort of couple of seasons, depending on what those numbers come out at. But it's certainly a much better system than what we've had in the past, where it's sort of been quite subjective, that season setting and the bag limit. So we're not always going to get what perhaps we think we might or should get, but it ensures sustainability in the duck population, and it's going to work out much better for hunters in the long term.
We do tend to get hung up on bag limits, and I'm a little bit sick of hearing about it, to tell the truth. I've been working in this industry for 12 years, and every year it's the whole bag limit debate, and I'm quite frankly a bit sick of it. What AHM does give us is that consistency of season. So we've heard from government now that we're guaranteed to have a full-length season from the third Wednesday in March now to the long weekend in June, and that's going to be set in stone for at least the next 3 years. So while the bag limit may vary a little bit, the certainty around the actual season is something we should be celebrating.
So make your plans, book your holidays.
Make your plans.
Yeah.
That's right. Get your wind test. Do whatever you got to do.
And it's all about opportunity. So you're going to have those 3 months of hunting opportunity. So regardless of the daily bag limit, get out there and enjoy it and make the most of it.
And it was a good full-length season with lots of opportunity. The dark cloud on that, I suppose, from the perspective of some, would be the disturbance mitigation regime.
I think it's David's
Is that what it's called, David? Is it a
David's favourite
disturbance
topic, isn't it?
process?
Oh, something. It's a closure process. Let's be honest about that.
He's even got closures on the thing.
Yeah. Look, and we're still not happy with that process. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times when wetlands do need to be closed for genuine reasons, and we have no problem at all with that. But the way it's been done in the past and continues to be done at the moment causes some problems, because whilst there is a disturbance sort of ranking, the risk assessment associated with that is sadly lacking. And once again, we've got a very subjective way of doing it. And once wetlands are closed, it becomes a very onerous process to reopen them. So we had a wrap-up meeting the other day from the duck season with GMA, and we've suggested setting up a working group to actually work through this and get some good science involved, and a much more robust, objective sort of process.
And look, to be fair to the government, whilst that process leaves a lot to be desired, they were a lot sharper with their reopenings this year.
Yeah, we got some. We're suggesting that we know that most of the disturbance and the issues are really in that first 2 weeks of the season, when everyone's sort of getting out and about. So our suggestion is, in the future, and this will go to this working group, is to have a time limit on those disturbances. So we're finding in a lot of these cases the reason for the closure has gone, but it takes an inordinate amount of time to actually get them reopened. So if they if they decide they need to close them for a set period, 2 or 3 weeks, and then at the end of that, they can reassess, and if they need to be, they can be closed. Otherwise, they automatically open, and I think that'll alleviate some of the concerns and some of the problems we've faced.
Yeah, so always room for improvement, and certainly room for improvement there. Victoria's still, and not to downplay the seriousness of those closures, still got awesome public land access in Victoria, and a really good opportunity to hunt.
And look, there's always going to be issues with closures in Victoria. It's something we're just going to have to wear, but the process can always be improved. And we're always looking at the trigger points. And the trigger points that exist are trigger points for management. They're not trigger points for closures. And what we're seeing a lot, especially now, is as soon as something gets on that list, it like a species exceeds the trigger point, the instant result is just, let's close it. When there's a bunch of other management tools we can use, if they're going to close a wetland, that's fine. We sometimes support that. But what we'd also like to see is it's closed. It's not closed to hunting. It's closed. To say that hunters and hunting boats will disturb wildlife, and yet you can have 45 V8 ski boats going around, just makes absolutely no sense. Makes a mockery of the whole process.
I think the field and game guys made the point about the closure at Connewarre when there was an air show going on there. If it's about risk mitigation, then by all means, mitigate the risks.
Yep.
Yeah, and we know how much disturbance came from that air show, because we were actually out at Eagle Park Range, and we had planes flying at very low altitude, and yes, it was disturbing.
So maybe the solution is that Victoria moves the air show away from duck season.
That seems like the obvious solution.
But
No, not simple. Daryl touched on avian influenza because whilst it didn't affect a great deal of hunting crews, it affected one that was very important to Daryl.
Yeah, mine.
And look, there was a closure around Euroa, an exclusion zone, and all sorts of protocols in place around Euroa for the avian influenza outbreak. There was a little bit of commentary, and I'd say it wasn't from duck hunters on the association's Facebook page that, this is an anti-hunting conspiracy and how terrible it is, and that's just not true. It was a biosecurity hazard that had a pretty significant impact on people's businesses and lives and livelihoods in that area. And from our perspective, I think the way Agriculture Victoria handled it, communicating with hunters, was very, very good.
It was very well managed, and we're involved in the process right from the start. The closures were concentrated on that east side of the Hume Highway, not the Hume Highway, the Goulburn Valley Highway.
Well, there's not a heap of duck swamps.
Which there isn't, and they'd avoided some of the major hunting areas that are in that area. They actually avoided with the closures. The problem was moving in and out of those areas, but even that was very well managed. I thought it was going to be a nightmare. I have friends that live in some of those areas, and the exclusion zone went all the way down to Seymour at the beginning, so it was quite a large area. So I've got quite a few people that I hunt with in those areas, and they were able to apply for permits. It was quite a simple process because at one stage you couldn't bring even hunting equipment in and out of the areas. So it did restrict people a little bit, but they were able to apply for permits, and we left some boats in some other places, and we changed some of the things we did, but we were able to do pretty much everything we normally do.
And you were able to do that because the communication was so good. So everyone was pretty clear on what was going on and what was expected. So
it was surprisingly well managed, I might add.
Refreshingly.
Credit where it's due. I mean, we criticise when things don't go well, but that was actually well managed and well communicated.
Yeah, so I usually do camp on that side where the closure was, where I'd normally camp, and we moved over and we camped at Reedy Lake, and it was a fantastic week. Something different.
The other thing that we got an update on from GMA last week was their enforcement and compliance efforts over the duck season in particular.
Yeah, so once again, hunter compliance was very good across the board. There was a few issues, fairly minor. Nobody shot over their bag, which was really good to see. Concerning that there's still people turning up with toxic shot on wetlands. That just shouldn't be happening these days. It's been over 20 years since that came in, so there's really no excuse for that. A few people had expired game licences. So the moral of the story is check before you go hunting. Just make sure that your game licence is current. You can renew them online. So there's really no excuse for that. And I think the other ones were mainly people not affixing or not leaving a wing affixed to the carcass. So people just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, be aware of that. There were not to trivialise any of those offences, but there were no people booked for shooting over their bag limit. There were no people booked for any animal cruelty type offences. So the offences that cause us more concern, I suppose, were not detected amongst hunting, which was from a greatly increased compliance effort too, and a lot of hunters checked.
Yeah, there was. And we also heard a lot during the parliamentary inquiry around Aboriginal culturally significant areas and damage to cultural heritage assets. So again, no hunters were charged any of those things. So that's a good thing. But the fact that we are still getting people in possession of lead shot all these years later, and we're not talking one or two, there was quite a few. It's just unacceptable. And the game license one, if you're going to go and get a game license, and they're not, it was sold to me that, they were new hunters and it was too hard to get their license, and that they weren't new hunters. They were existing hunters that hadn't renewed their license. So whether they knowingly didn't renew their license or whether they, forgot to renew their license, or one was, my wife was supposed to, whatever it is, check your license before you go hunting. It's the easiest part of the whole process.
On the other side of it, and whilst we don't like to dwell on it too much, quite a few activists were apprehended and dealt with by enforcement. There were two who faced court sort of during the season for offences they'd committed the previous year, one at Latrobe Valley and one up at Kerrang. The one at Kerrang's subject of a very well-circulated video confrontation with GMA officers. What, from our perspective, I think was really disappointing was the slaps on the wrists they got from magistrates. So one of them got a $150 fine, one of them got a good behaviour bond, and magistrates saying stuff like, "Oh, we accept that this is a political issue or that you're passionate." Well, these are the Parliament has said these are public safety offences, which should indicate the seriousness of it. And if that did indicate the seriousness of it, the fact that the Parliament's put 60 penalty units in the Act on these offences, a $12,000 fine.
Well, you don't get to pick and choose the laws you want to abide by. The laws are in place, and whether you like them or not, unfortunately, they're the laws and you need to abide by them.
And whilst a magistrate's got some discretion, from $12,000 down to $150's testing the credulity of discretion.
It's not sending much of a deterrent message. It's probably sending a message, but it's probably not the one that we'd like to see sent out to these people.
Yeah, so there were 12 offences. Most of my public safety or being possession of protected wildlife. So no game licence, no ducks, essentially.
And these are people who are breaking the law in the exercise of their own intolerance. These are people who are breaking the law because they think they know better than society. And the courts should deal with them and deal with them harshly. We're not saying lock them up because the offence doesn't allow them to. But Dave's probably got a different view on that.
No, just fine them. That's what'll hurt. But a decent fine.
You touched on it earlier. You had a New Zealand adventure, which, from what I've gathered, seems to be alcohol flavoured with peanuts. Daryl?
No, there's no alcohol in New Zealand. There does seem to be a passion to drink strange alcoholic beverages, and I haven't drank Stone's green ginger wine since I was I wish I was 18, probably around the age of 18, but it seems to pop up in New Zealand constantly. And yes, there are some strange nut-flavoured spirits popping around the place. Yeah, it's getting crazy over there. But no, wonderful trip. It's always good to get over there. I've got a group I've been hunting with, I don't know now, a while, quite a few years. I try and get over every year. Obviously, COVID, I missed a couple of years, so it was good to catch up. There were some people I hadn't seen since pre-COVID, so it was good to get over there. And I snuck over a couple of days for opening and got to camp a few nights. And we got a hut over there, so I stayed in the hut a couple of nights and then hunted 5 days and came home. So, yeah, it was absolutely fabulous. Took my son over. Great time.
Excellent.
It's always good to see our Kiwi brothers and sisters.
And path forward for duck hunting in Victoria, as we touched on, we've got 3 years locked in of season dates.
Yeah, look, I think we're in a good place. AHM has been implemented, and we just need to see how that's going to work out as the data goes into it. But critical is that season lengths. As we said, we'll continue to work on that closure process and see if we can get that improved. But real future for duck hunting in Victoria, and certainly encourage people who might have been a bit hesitant to get involved because of the uncertainty in the whole thing. Now's the time that, get involved in duck hunting. We've got the SSAA Victoria Duck Hunters Club is kicking off again. So they're going to be running education and information nights. So if you're interested in getting into duck hunting, now's the time.
We're in a better place now than we've been in since before the Millennium Drought. So we're talking, 25 years. We're probably in the best place we've been. The drought broke in 2011 and 2012. We had some great hunting seasons, but then regulation really started to hit us. And we faced all sorts of things in that period between 2011 and now. I think where we're now with AHM, we're in a really good place. And now could be the good old days. Let's hope.
All right. The other half of the game hunting scene in Victoria, I suppose, is deer hunting.
And we still do that?
Deer hunting?
Yeah. Thought we'd become a duck hunting organisation.
Well,
very, very much deer hunting on this side of the table.
We have had the criticism of GMA previously that they are the duck management authority, but probably unfair, and they've probably had the focus there because the political environment has caused them to. But.
Yeah, and we do spend a lot of time on duck hunting, and let's hope that starts to change a little bit. As much as I love it, I'd like it to be less regulated, obviously.
And good news for deer hunting. Announcement 10 days or so ago from Minister Demopoulos that the Snowy and the Erranundra will be opened up for deer stalking.
Yep. Look, fantastic result. It's been a long time coming. We've been pushing this for a long time. Other hunting organisations, I know ADA has been pushing this for a long time as well. So it's really good that we've got that. It's all about that opportunity. So we need something to hunt with, somewhere to hunt, and something to hunt. and we've got that now. We've got more of the somewhere to hunt. There's plenty of deer up in there. So, the opportunity's there, so people just need to get up there and make the most of it. We haven't got the exact date that it's going to be open yet, but we're expecting within the next 12 months or so, it should be ready to go.
And like you said, a long time coming. I think we discussed on a previous podcast that Ken Slee's great handheld photo of a sambar stag running down the Snowy from the 80s just before it was declared a park. So there were certainly big deer there. Hopefully Ken doesn't think he can go and chase that same stag when it reopens because it might be disappointed, but maybe it's great,
something like that.
Grandson or something will be there for him. And look, it's really important to hunters. So it's more opportunity. Obviously, you've got a growing cohort of hunters. And it gives you opportunity. It's pretty important to the regional areas too. So we know the economic activity that hunting tourism produces. And if you look at towns like Orbost that have really copped the brunt from environmental policy and deindustrialisation, to put it as softly as we can, and have been told for decades that, your future is going to be in tourism and your future is going to be in other areas. Well, this is something that actually brings real people and real expenditure to those towns and starts getting some money flowing back in.
Yeah, there's no doubt Orbost has some tourism, but you got to look at how far from Melbourne it actually is, and outside of the sort of summer holiday period, it's a bit of a ghost town out that way. And most of our hunting happens in the winter months, and our hunters do tend to travel a long way. So I think it will certainly bring some prosperity to Orbost.
And hunters spend. We know from successive economic reports that whilst the majority of hunters live in metropolitan Melbourne, the majority of their expenditure is in regional Victoria. So it is really important, and it's, wouldn't even say it's disappointing. It's completely predictable that this got subject to some pretty silly attacks from the Green Lobby.
They just have a completely anti-hunting sort of agenda and don't believe hunting can have any positive impacts. And look, we just know that's not the case. We know the positive impacts that hunting has economically, for the well-being of hunters themselves, and also that environmental impact. Now, recreational hunting is not going to solve all of your problems where deer numbers are excessive, but it certainly has a huge impact on the overall deer population in Victoria. We're taking in excess of 100,000 deer a year. And for these green groups to try and just dismiss that and say it has no bearing on anything, it's just quite ridiculous. And it's a shame they're just focused on ideology rather than actual practical outcomes.
Well, and it's also a bit of, we never claimed that we wanted access to those areas to dramatically reduce deer numbers. That's never been the claim of recreational hunters in Victoria. Our claim for access to public land has always been that hunting's a legitimate use of public land and we should be allowed to do it. So to then come out and it's a real false premise that they're attacking on, saying, but it won't dramatically reduce deer numbers like spending hundreds of thousands of dollars flying a chopper around.
I wish it was only hundreds of thousands. In that area alone, I think millions have been spent, especially post-fires.
Well, and look, that's true. It won't, but we never claimed that was the reason why we wanted to be there in the first place.
No. And that's not the objective, but it is one of those things that it's a flow-on benefit, if you like, that you've got hunters in those areas and they are taking deer that otherwise wouldn't be taken. And they throw out the other sort of one they constantly trot out is that deer are protected in Victoria because of the game status. And I don't know how many times that has to be debunked. It's just completely misleading that the game status of deer does nothing to stop control activities where they need to be taken, and it really does nothing to stop recreational hunters going out and taking animals. The only sort of limitation we've got on that is hog deer, but the other three species that we've got sort of wild sustainable populations in Victoria has no impact on their management.
And there are benefits. There are all these benefits, like we said, from hunting. I think you said to the Weekly Times that great government term triple bottom line.
Yep.
Benefits, but hunting genuinely does deliver social, environmental, economic benefits where it takes place, particularly when it takes place at a decent scale.
Yeah, but that just doesn't suit the narrative of some of these organisations looking for funding so they can solve problems that don't necessarily exist.
Moving on from deer, we had some news out of the UK about further deregulation of silencers, and I know there will be people write in and ring in and say they're not silencers, they're suppressors, they're moderators, and they are all three of those things. The terminology we use is silencers because that's the terminology that's in the Firearms Act in Victoria.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you don't like it, just imagine that we're saying the term that you like, but we're going to talk about silencers.
Well, the original patent was for a silencer, and it is a silencer permit that is issued under the Act. So yeah, silencers it is for this one.
So, bit of news from our friends at BASC.
Yeah, no, some really good news, and they've been advocating for this for a long time. So basically, silencers over there have been completely removed from, or it's going to be completely removed from the Firearms Act. So there's going to be basically no regulation. I think the only proviso to that is you might have to have a firearms licence, but they're now going to be considered a firearms accessory, which they are. They're a tube of metal with some baffles.
So at the moment they're serial numbered and registered like a firearm would be. So they're going to be removed from that process.
And their Secretary of State for Policing, I think it was, so effectively their police minister said exactly that about these are like a sling. They're an accessory. There's no reason for us to be involved.
Oh, look, it's a sensible, rational decision, and we've been sort of raising the issue here, and we will continue to do so. And hopefully, we can get a similar outcome down the track.
Jeff Borman asked a question about it in Parliament a couple of weeks ago now. An interesting question, I thought, in the approach it took, rather than just saying, give us silencers, it was, will the Minister refer the issue to his Firearm Consultative Committee for advice, which we await the Minister's response to that question, but that would seem like a really sensible, logical way to get some proper policy advice on this instead of the sort of knee-jerk stuff that we normally see.
Yeah, it needs some facts around it and some evidence instead of just this fear-mongering. And I think too many people watch Hollywood movies and have this idea about silencers, and it's just not reflected in the real world.
On a more negative thing, I suppose, something that probably doesn't affect a heap of shooters, but certainly affects some and is tangential to shooters, which is this ban on machetes in Victoria. Well, there's a lot of shooters and certainly members of our collectors clubs, some of whom share an office with us, who do have important collections, militaria collections of machetes. There are certainly hunters who have contacted us saying, I go lightweight backpack hunting. I take a machete so that I can hack a sapling to use as a supplementary pole, or clear a bit of brush around a camp, or help myself with breaking down a deer because I'm a minimalist and I take minimal gear. And of course, there's agriculture where these things are used quite extensively.
There's a whole heap of legitimate uses for machetes. I think we all agree there's no place for them on suburban streets, which is what the government's trying to sort of alleviate here. But for people who have already got a firearms licence, or you're a collector, why wouldn't you be able to have a machete? I mean, we're fit and proper people. We've had to go through all those checks. We have firearms, but then you can't have a machete. I just don't quite get that part of it.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure it was already illegal to walk down the street with a machete.
Yeah.
So what are we? Is the machete the problem, or is the walking down the street with the machete the problem here?
All this is true, and we pushed pretty hard for exemptions for hunters and for collectors. And whilst it's great to say, we did this and we had a win, well, we didn't get the exemption for hunters. We are still pursuing it because we had pretty good indications that we would, and it hasn't eventuated. We have got an exemption for collectors, but if you're a collector, you might need a degree in law and Latin to understand the drafting of the exemption, which is the most tortured legalese language that then requires you to refer to several documents. I'm not sure if it was malevolence or incompetence that caused a bureaucrat to draft that exemption in the way they have, but it's another thing we'll be addressing, because it's really important that if you want people to comply with the law, it's really important that they're able to understand what the law says and how those exemptions will work for them. And for similar prohibited items that have exemptions. So for things like crossbows and daggers and swords, you can go to the exemption orders and you can read very clearly in plain English who can have them, under what circumstances they can have them, and what they can do with them. And that's simply not the case for the agriculture exemption. Is not bad. The one for collectors is just horrendous. So we'll keep working on it.
Yeah, I read through that, and it makes very little sense to the layman. Barry, you've got a law degree, and you managed to sort of map it out.
But it took a struggle.
It took you a long time. So for the average person on the street, it's just ridiculous that you can't understand what the exemptions are.
Yeah. So again, something we'll keep working on, and whilst we front up for a lot of these fights, we don't necessarily win them all.
But we're there advocating on behalf of our membership and hunters and shooters more broadly, and that's what we do, and we do it to the best of our ability. But we don't win them all, but we'll give it a red hot crack.
Absolutely. Which segues a little bit, I suppose, into a couple of weeks, about 3 or 4 weeks ago at Eagle Park, we had a meeting with a group that doesn't have a name.
Well, almost. We're almost
has a name. But a combined group of Victoria shooting and hunting organisations, and to talk about the 2026 state election, which is in the end of November next year, which might seem like a long time away, but we've got the apparatchiks in both the major parties saying, if you want anything in policy, get it to us now. Policy development work is going on, and we need to look at these things and cost them. And so we had what I thought was a really good, positive meeting with that group. We had another follow-up meeting yesterday, and we're close to preparing a document that we can start socialising with the parties. That'll change and continue to develop as we head into next year's election. People have asked publicly, will we be naming all of the groups involved in this group? And we won't. We'll tell you that we're on it, and any of the other groups that want to tell you they're on it, that's fine too, but that's not for us.
Well, what we can tell you is, we've always played with the three majors. So you expect the three majors in there, but this time around we've got some of the smaller players. And we're not just talking firearms; we're talking about bow users as well. So there's a fair mix of people in there. I think it's fabulous to get them all together around the table.
There is. And the other question I've seen from people is, will you be sharing the document publicly? And the answer is, well, no, not at this stage.
Not at this stage.
But we will. We will. This is a working document and a developing document, but we will be sharing it with the people who are running the major parties, and certainly all of the groups involved are sharing it with their boards and committees, and there's a fair level of transparency around it, but we really don't need to be handing it straight to the Animal Justice Party and the Greens just at this point to have them nobble it.
I'm sure they'll have it as soon as it comes out.
But I think we work proactively and cooperatively wherever we can with all the other hunting and shooting organisations, and this is just another example of that. But it makes sense that if we're going to go, particularly to the major parties, sort of with a log of claims, if you like, that we're trying to cover everything, and we're all singing from the same hymn book.
It's certainly what the feedback we've had from people in politics, that's what they want to see. It makes life easier for them, obviously, but it also gives us collectively a stronger claim if we can all go with one voice and say, here is shooting and hunting. It's a one-stop shop. Here's what we all want, and present them with stuff that they can do. Hopefully we can keep pushing forwards.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing too. We need to be realistic about what we're asking for. There's no point pushing for stuff that there's no way in a million years we're ever going to get. So let's be realistic, work with the other organisations, and see that we can benefit sort of everyone out of this.
Moving on from that, we had a court decision in the Victorian County Court.
Is this hog deer related?
This
is hog deer related. We had to get on the hog deer.
Daryl's been waiting for us to get to what SSAA's really important mission is.
Hog deer.
You think we spend an inordinate amount of time on duck hunting? Daryl would argue that we spend
just as much time on hog
deer,
if not more.
Now that doesn't reflect David and my own personal bias,
not at all,
in any way, shape, or form.
No, of course not.
This is not to trivialise this, though, because this is an important thing that a private landholder's done. So a hog deer poacher had a judgment against him in the Victorian County Court for trespassing, $120,000, and then the landholder's going for costs as well, which, from my conversations with the landholder, that's several $100,000 on top.
Yeah, that's got to hurt. So, and the thing is, poaching isn't a victimless crime, particularly where it's landowners are putting in a big effort and they're actually managing their land for different deer species and things like that. They're putting in a heap of time, effort, money into managing their properties. So the idea that it's sort of just no one's impacted by this is just wrong. And I think that judgment and that amount of money has showed what the judge actually thought about that. And it's going to set a precedent. So the GMA mightn't be able to ping poachers for everything that they do because there's different sort of levels of proof. But if landowners have enough evidence, they can certainly go down this path. And I think, 120,000 plus costs. I'd be really thinking about it before you jump a fence, wouldn't you?
It sends a message, but also hats off to the landholders, and they're named in the judge. It's Neil and Corrie, and they've not only have they done a great deal for hog deer on that property, so that they will never realise enough money off that property to recoup what they've put into it in the 20 odd years that they've owned it. They threw it all out here in chasing after this fellow. It certainly wasn't something that a lawyer would say was a commercially clever thing to do, pursuing this prosecution, pursuing this civil case in the way they have. But they did it and they stuck with it and they've got the bloke.
Yep.
And good on him. It sets a precedent now, and it sends a really strong message that even if GMA or other enforcement agencies don't have the sort of proof to run a prosecution, you could still be pretty vulnerable, and all of a sudden saving yourself the $6,500 that you might pay to secure a hunt for a trophy hog deer, and being a real clever fellow poaching them probably doesn't seem that clever.
No, or you could do what everyone or most people in Victoria do, get your tags and go and hunt public land, and there's no guarantees of success, but you've got the opportunity to get out there. So
we've got a public land hog deer ballot in this state that about 10% or so of the people who enter it get a really good public land opportunity every year. There's other options. You can buy your own private property. You can join places like Sunday Island. There's heaps of stuff you can do that don't involve putting a mask on your head and being a scumbag and going onto other people's private property and breaking the law.
Absolutely.
So well done to them. Hats off.
Yep. No, great result.
We've had, if you follow SSAA social media, the anti-gunners have been particularly invigorated at the moment. I don't know if it's funding season or what it is, but seems to be every other week there's an article in the newspaper from a group that calls themselves the Australian Gun Safety Alliance, which is in reality an AstroTurf front for the Alana and Madeline Foundation. It's run out of their office using their staff. It's got a website that belongs to the Alana and Madeline Foundation, but they like to use different hats to make themselves sound credible. Probably the most surprising thing about the Australian Gun Safety Alliance is that their one employee has absolutely no qualifications, expertise or knowledge in gun safety.
Why would you?
Well, that's not what they're about.
Well, let's be brutally honest here. It's not about gun safety. It's about gun bans, and that's their agenda. That's what they want to achieve. I mean, we are interested in gun safety, and that's why we run so much of the training that we do, so people can use firearms safely and competently. So, yeah, this lot, nothing to do with gun safety.
They're prohibitionists. Their idea of gun safety is that if suddenly you stop heavily vetted, heavily trained, licensed, law-abiding people from having firearms will not be a problem for anyone, which is...
it's worked with machetes, so...
It's delusional.
Of course it is.
But that's what they are. Anyway, we've been reinvigorated in pushing back against them, I suppose. We've sort of drawn a bit of a line as an association and saying we're going to get on the front foot and really charge back against these public attacks and call out their nonsense for what it is, because ultimately it can affect public policy. You can get a politician who reads the headlines and have a look at what's happened in Western Australia, does something stupid and populist, and that really affects licensed firearm owners. So we've got a role to play in pushing back pretty hard against this stuff, and that's what we've been doing. Back to the man of the hour, Minister Demopoulos, who
He's been doing well, hasn't he? Credit where it's due.
There'll be a statue to Steve before in this state, I reckon. If the hunting community's got anything to do with it, he saved duck hunting. He's given us access to deer hunting in the Snowy and the Erranundra, and then he came out at a recent conference the ETU was holding, and someone asked a question about the Great Forest National Park, and he said, "That's not our policy. It never has been, and we won't be doing it."
I think that's pretty clear.
That's a win. It's good news. It's, again, something SSAA Victoria and other organisations have been active on for over a decade now against that issue. And that access is something we continue to jealously guard. But beyond that, it's common sense from the minister. So the people who pushed for this Great Forest National Park, their whole thing was stopping logging. They stopped logging. Logging's gone.
And they still want more
and
national
now
parks.
they still keep pushing for the national park, and it's really pleasing to see the government draw the line somewhere and say, no, we've actually already given you people enough. And quite predictably, as you get with these green groups, you don't feed the crocodile thinking it'll eat you last. There's no point appeasing them. There's no point giving them what they want, because they're just going to do an Oliver twist on you and say, please, sir, can I have some more?
Now, I'm not sure I'm quite ready for the statue, Barry, but
I
think where we are in Victoria.
If Minister Demopoulos is listening, what does he need to do to get a statue, Darryl?
It'll be duck hunting related. That's whatever I'll hog deer. But what we've got here in Victoria with public land access is phenomenal, and the fact that we've now got some more, and there's other states that are fighting to get any. We're in a fantastic position that we're the envy of the rest of the country. So it's something we need to protect, and we can keep on pushing and keep on pushing.
Yeah. And when you look at sort of particularly the game sort of hunting that we've got in this state, I think we're the envy for much of the rest of the world. I mean, we've got 4 million hectares, probably more now, of land available. We've basically got a 365-day a year deer season.
3-month duck season.
Yep.
200 state game reserves.
Yep. Quail season. So look,
we're in a very good place.
We still whinge though.
We still whinge, and look, and all things can be improved, but and that's why we work so hard to maintain what we've got and try and improve it. Because when you look at it objectively, we have got it pretty good here in Victoria. And it's just important that we make sure that we maintain that for our kids and our grandkids, because we all want to see what we do be available to people for generations to come.
Another thing on public land access that's probably not so good. Public land access takes many forms. So there's the regulatory permission to access public land is one part of public land access, but actually being able to access it and use it is equally important. Some might argue more important. These wild dog baiting programs have been an issue for a number of years, but there was certainly a baiting notice that came out recently that's going to effectively close large areas of public land for 6 months from the 1st of July for hounds, gun dogs, deer hunting dogs because of 1080 baiting. So,
yeah, and look, this has been around for decades that they've been doing these sort of things. And I know when I was hunting with hounds, there was always you're keeping an eye out for the signs and keeping abreast of where you could and couldn't go. But yeah, this seems to be sort of really widespread at the moment. Yeah, we need to sort of control wild dogs where they're having an impact, but there needs to be a smarter way to do it. And I know in the past in some of those East Gippsland areas, the local Deeka people have worked with hunting groups and organisations to try and minimise the impacts of the baiting, to try and work out areas that can be left open and sort of rotate it through. So there are things that can be done. But I think it's a bit of a lazy way of doing it, and particularly at this time of the year when all the deer hunting's going on up there. So it obviously really impacts on hound hunters, but it also impacts on anyone hunting with companion dogs and things like that. So there's got to be a better way that we can do this.
Yeah, and there used to be certainly much shorter windows when those baits would be out. Mm-hmm. But to say, here's the areas and hold fire for the next 6 months is, it's the path of least resistance, and I think there needs to be a bit more work done on it.
Yep, entirely agree.
On a somewhat related issue, in the state budget back in May, so that's how long since we've been together in this room, issue close to Dave's heart because he has members contact him about it.
On a very regular basis.
Very regular basis. The fox bounty got a reprieve and there's another $2.1 million. So it plods along for another year.
Yep, it will. And look, the Greenies will be jumping up and down about this because bounties don't achieve anything and all the rest of it. They'll be having kittens over it. But anyway, it's good. It's it obviously doesn't cover the full costs of people going out there and controlling foxes, but it gives them something back at the end of the day and encourages that. So encourage people to get out there and kill some foxes.
It's definitely an incentive. There's no if buts or maybes.
I can think of most of us could probably think of ways that the government has spent $2.1 million that we'd agree with less than on the fox bounty.
I can think of a few.
Yes.
On a final note, before we get into our guest, members will have noticed, and we've put some stuff out. There's a bit of a brouhaha with SSAA at a national level. So, unfortunately, the Queensland branch is at odds with the national board, and the national board say Queensland are 6 months behind in their obligations, which could see Queensland removed from the national SSAA, which is unfortunate in my view. But the important message for our members is that SSAA Victoria is not really affected by this in any way. We're a strong independent branch of the association. We're committed to the federation. And the benefits of that federation are pretty clear, I think. So we've got that class-leading insurance products. We've got publications like Australian Shooter that certainly getting better and better. Seen some really marked improvements in Australian Shooter over the last few months in particular. Coordinated campaigns on big issues like this National Firearms Register and against these anti-gun people. The ability for us to do that as a national body is really important. So, whether that's national sharing information for us that we use in Spring Street or us sharing information gets used in Canberra or in Macquarie Street in Sydney, that's all quite valuable for members. And it's good to fight bad policy before it spreads.
Yeah, look, it is a bit disappointing. I know our members want to see a united sort of organisation. They want to see us united with other organisations, and we work really strongly to do that. But yeah, I think your point that this is sort of away from Victoria, and it's not going to impact on what we're doing here, is important for people to realise.
Yeah, I think Victorian members certainly saw the Federation in action last year when we partnered with New South Wales to bring the Shot Expo back to life. So that was that federation in action with the two states working together and backed by the national resources to deliver something pretty special for the shooting community.
Yep. And I think if people want to see more about it, I think there's the podcast that the CEO and the national president
they've followed our lead. They've copied us three blokes and they've created their own national which is a very good podcast, and we'll put a link up to SSAA National's new podcast. But yeah, as you said, the national CEO and president addressed this issue pretty well in the podcast they brought out earlier in the week.
Oh, look, far too long stuff's been swept under the carpet. There's been infighting in all the organisations for years and years and years. And look, this one's out in the open. If you want to know more about it, that's all the information's there. So
sunlight's a magnificent disinfectant. So after what we could probably only describe as a marathon intro.
It's not bad.
Let's get to our guest. All right, our guest on the podcast today is one we've been looking forward to and trying to tee up for a couple of weeks. It's Steve Hill from Hunters4Hope. Australian hunters will have seen a fair bit on social media lately from Hunters4Hope, which is an organisation in New Zealand that takes excess venison from all sorts of hunters, processes it through and gets it into food charities. So welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Before we get into what the organisation is and what it does, probably a bit of background on you personally, where you came from and...
you may or may not believe it, I'm born and bred Australian. So I grew up in Adelaide. I've been over here now for just over 20 years. So did a trade certificate in butchery back in Adelaide as a young lad. Went travelling in my early 20s. Met a lovely Kiwi girl while we were up in Queensland. And as they say, the rest is history.
So you moved down to the South Island of New Zealand?
Yeah, so Bernice, my partner, she's from here. her family were farming over here. A wee bit of family illness, and she wanted to come home, and we ended up coming home and staying. So,
And you were always a hunter when you were growing up in Adelaide, Steve?
not really. Like, I was sort of a city kid growing up. Had a bit of exposure to hunting and shooting rabbits and foxes and the odd roo and that sort of thing, but not really. It wasn't until I came over here and made some good mates and started chasing red deer primarily, and sort of got the bug here.
But it's a mandatory thing to do if you live where you live.
Oh, well, in recent years, especially after COVID, the deer problem over here has gone crazy, as I see it has in certain parts of Australia as well. So to go out and see mobs of deer is not uncommon.
Yeah, which leads us into the organisation that yourself and Adam run, which is Hunters for Hope. Can you tell us a bit about what Hunters for Hope is?
So basically what Hunters for Hope is as a charity is an avenue that hunters, both local hunters and international trophy hunters, can donate any venison they don't need themselves, and we put it all together, and once a month we'll process it into mince and give it to local food banks and charity groups.
Yeah, sounds very simple. It's been an aspiration certainly here in Victoria from hunters for a long, long time, and we've seemed to bang our head against regulatory hurdles. You've got a bit of a pretty well-established regime of butchers being able to do home kill sort of stuff and process game meat there as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure of the exact certification they need, but there is a tick off that they have to get for a local small town or small village butcher to process what they call home kill or recreational catch, so game meat or cattle beasts they might kill on farm. It's a little bit different over here to my understanding of Australia.
Yeah, a bit more. I think you've had some experience with that, Daryl, with your duck hunting over there.
Yeah, but I've been hunting over there for 15 years, and it's always been fairly normal to bag up some meat at the end of the hunt and it gets sent off for processing and comes back as salami or beer sticks or comes back as something, Kranskis it seems fairly standard over there.
Yeah, no, and it's, to be fair, I don't know anybody that lives rurally that wouldn't, whether it be home kill or game, just utilise these butchers to process their own meat rather than purchasing it as a special item.
It's a nice culture. You've got something for us to aspire to. You got something, Dave?
Yeah, I suppose hunters traditionally share their harvest with sort of family and friends, and that's obviously a big part over there as well. So what you're doing is sort of extending that out so that rather than that close relationships, they're actually being able to donate it to people who are more needy across the broader community.
Yes, correct. So up until the last 2 or 3 years, it was the use of home kill and game meat. The legislation was really ambiguous. So if, for the instance, say if you're on a sheep and beef farm and you killed half a dozen sheep, up until recently, you could use that for people that lived on the farm permanently, so your farm workers and whatnot. But if your mother-in-law come to visit, technically you weren't allowed to give it to her. So that law's changed in the last few years to say that people can share the meat with family and friends and they can donate it. So yeah, that's a little bit different to how things are certainly over there.
Yeah, because you are allowed, as a farmer, you are allowed to kill on your farm for your consumption, but you can't give it to anyone else. And it just seems like such a no-brainer that we've got, particularly for hunters, you're taking animals, and particularly as deer populations have increased and hunters are taking more animals, we fully encourage all of our members and hunters generally to utilise as much as they can of what they shoot. But if you're taking a number of deer, there's going to be a surplus. And that's where what you guys are doing is absolutely outstanding. And it just seems like such a no-brainer. But legislatively here, we're running into some of those problems of how we convert that meat and get it to the people who need it.
Well, not that I would advocate it, but if you get to the point that you worry about forgiveness rather than permission and feed 100,000 people like we're targeting to feed this year, I don't know if you'd get a slap on the wrist. Like they might struggle to get that across the line.
Yeah, one of my favourite sayings. So got me in some trouble over the years. But
Doesn't it?
back to Hunters for Hope. So you're saying you're looking to do, I think I've read it on your site, something like 12 tonne of, bit over 12 tonne of venison and 100,000 people. Where did this idea start?
Well, it was me opening my big mouth, basically. So this is our third year in operation now. Our first year, I suppose go back a step from that. Historically, Adam and we've been hunting for years and we're getting a lot of surplus venison. So our freezers are full, our family and friends' freezers are full, and then we've still got surplus venison left over. So the way that I was brought up, it's sort of, we can't waste it. What are we going to do? We don't know yet. So I filled up a freezer in my garage at home. I've just trimmed it I didn't need, and the whole thing was full. So what we started doing was paying the local butcher, who was allowed to process game meat, get the local butcher to mince it up, and then we drop it off to the local food assistance pantry like we go to the Hope Community Trust in Rangiora, which is about 5 or 10 k's from here. So we started doing it off our own bat. And then we approached a local hunting competition, and with the idea that, well, if we've got a surplus, wonder if these guys want all their deer, because we knew that quite often those deer get left behind because they have a few fantas at the competition and forget about them. So we approached the committee and said, look, if we can process them, are you happy to ask hunters if they want to donate their deer to us? So we went to the first, it was 2023, went to the North Canterbury hunting competition, and we put a limit on 50 deer. So if we could get 50, we'd take 50, but don't do any more because we don't know exactly the workload yet. So long story short, we took 50, we've got a team of guys and girls, skinned and boned them out in one day, and got approximately 900 kilos of venison into the Hope Community Trust over the next day or two. Which was pretty cool. And then last year, 2024, our second year at the North Canterbury Hunting Competition, we just went to town and didn't worry about it. Thought, okay, well, as many deer as we can get donated, we're going to take the lot. So we took them all, and we ended up with, I'm trying to get my numbers right, I think just over 2,150 kilos of venison, including about 140 odd kilos of backsteak. So that was a big step up from 2023. And to put that in focus, and I know there's been a lot of views on our Facebook post from our recent hunting competition, but in 2025, so the hunting competition was only about a month ago, we just took everything that we could get donated, and we ended up with 3,099 kilos of venison from that hunting competition alone. That's including just shy of 200 kilos of backsteak. So we're starting to ramp up quite a bit. And
your volunteers are doing all the skinning, the boning sort of work on that?
Yeah, we've made it clear to our anybody that wants to help, absolutely fantastic, appreciate your help, but you are volunteering your time. So between Adam and myself and a team of guys and girls, we get the deer processed and we try and get it all done in one day.
So how does that process work, Steve? So you take the bark off them and get them off the bones. What happens then?
Yep. So this year what we did is, because I had a chat with the Hope Community Trust and the other community groups that they share with, because we're currently delivering 1,000 kilos every month into those guys to distribute, it was going to be a challenge to, without wasting any venison, to do a 3,000 kilo drop in the middle of the month. So this year, from the North Canterbury Hunting Competition, all of that venison got stored in our freezer. And what we can then do is throttle supply and manage it so that the amount we're processing and delivering into the Hope Trust on a monthly basis can actually be utilised. It's not, the community groups have got enough storage in their small chest freezers and whatnot to handle the volume. So we've got to be mindful of that as well.
It's got to be the very definition of a quality problem, isn't it? That you're getting too much venison to feed mouths.
Well, we very generously got donated a walk-in freezer approximately 18 months ago, and we thought, this is great. We're never going to have a problem here, no dramas. But then it didn't take long for that freezer to get full, and then we put the overflow of the venison into one of my clients' freezers about half an hour away to store there, and then that was full. And we're still getting more venison in and still delivering 1,000 kilos or so on a monthly basis. So we ended up buying a freezer container. We've had that for about a month or 6 weeks now. And unfortunately now that's full as well. So I think we're going to have to start increasing the amount that we're processing on a monthly basis just to have the throughput of product and not having to turn anything away.
So as you get bigger, obviously logistics are going to become a bigger and bigger issue. And as Baz said, it's a quality problem to have. But obviously there's costs involved in all that. So hunters are donating the meat, so they're doing their part. But then you've got volunteers cutting it up. But then you've got storage and distribution, which all cost money. So how do you go about sort of covering those sort of costs?
So at the moment, we don't get any government assistance. We don't get any funding whatsoever. We come under a charitable banner. So if people were to donate to us, we can give them receipts so they can offset tax and that sort of thing over here. But at the moment, Hunters for Hope is 100% reliant on donations. 100%.
So you're getting sort of cash donations in to cover some of those costs?
Yes, we are. But where we sit right as of today, we're pretty well hand to mouth.
Yep.
We did a costing about 12 months ago on what it actually cost us to collect venison, process it, and deliver it. And depending on exactly the parameters, it was between $2 and $2.50 for every kilo that we delivered.
Okay, that's still very cheap meat.
Oh, 100%. So that number's really easy to sell and try and get funding for. But then you say, okay, this year we're looking to do 12.5 tonne. So that's 25 grand. All of a sudden, that $2 a kilo looks quite a scary number.
So are you looking to government to help subsidise that and cover some of those costs? Because it's still a cheap out for them.
Oh, absolutely. They know about us. We have historically had emails and letters from ministers of parliament to say congratulations on what you're doing and encouraging us. But there's been conversations around funding, but as of today, nothing's come to fruition. Not yet.
How much time a week would you and Adam be putting into this personally?
If you ask my wife,
Too much. Yeah.
more than we probably care to admit. There's a lot of, with the increase in volume and everything else, there's a lot of admin has come into play. So it's just emails and like recording this sort of thing is the middle of the day for me. So normally I'm a stock agent, I travel around the countryside, but it limits what I can do today. So it's not just the time involved in doing this sort of thing, which is really cool. It's the add-on extra time. I would estimate that Adam and I probably put 10, 15 hours a week into this as a week by week every week. But when we do the big hunting competition and that sort of thing, I basically write the week off.
Yeah, and that's your time, and ultimately, that's your family's time, and it's money you're not making, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. So it's unfortunately the time that we're going to use, and we're happy to do it because we're both quite passionate about Hunters for Hope. We're keen to do what we can to keep things running smoothly, but it does come at a cost, whether it be professionally or family time or your own hunting time or whatever. There is a cost to it.
Yeah. So I suppose longer term, to make it sort of sustainable and continue to grow it, it's going to have to become sort of more professional, and there's going to have to be paid staff involved, which, as we talked about, quality problems. But from little things, big things grow, and it sounds like you're probably at the limit of what you can do at this stage with just sort of volunteers.
Well, yes and no. I think the concept of a couple of guys skinning and boning a whole stack of deer in the backyard, basically using a 40 or 50-year-old mincer and then donating huge volumes to help food assistance pantries and community groups. I think people like that story. And we are probably at about the limit of what we can do capacity-wise. And it's just space and time and everything else. It's the couple of legislation, a couple of rules and legislation that allow us to do what we do is that there can be no level of trade or profit. So to do this sort of thing, you've got to be really quite passionate about getting it up and running. In the first 12 or 18 months when we first started up, we had no funding, no donations, no nothing. And we sat back and worked out that Adam and I had probably put about 15 or 18 grand of our own money just to get things up and running. And sort of now we are lucky that we've had some reasonably generous cash donors, but we can't keep banging on their doors to get more donations. We were talking the other day and looking at our Facebook. We've got 8,500 or 8,700 followers on Facebook. And if all of our followers donated $10 each, gangbusters, we'll be enough money to go for probably the next 5 years. And that's sort of where we're trying to encourage a lot of small donations. That it's probably similar to how we do the venison. Put all the small bits together and we get a large result. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's a fantastic effort, and it's great to see where you've taken it and the amount of work that goes into it, which sort of we're trying to get something similar going here. It gives us a good indication of exactly what's involved and the commitment that's needed. I suppose one of our big questions that the legislators and regulators here talk about is food safety. Now, everybody in this room and yourself are all deer hunters. We've shot a lot of deer in the bush and cut deer up in the bush and taken them home and butchered them and fed them to family and friends and never had an issue.
Yep.
On this broader scale, sort of, how do you guarantee that food safety? Because that's the big question they keep sort of coming back to us with.
Well, there's probably two parts to that question. And when I was saying before about there's the bit of legislation that we've got to adhere to, the other side of that is that when we supply what they call wild catch or game meat, that every step along that supply chain has to be aware that it's unregulated meat and they eat that at their own risk. So that sort of, people are aware and they know what's going on. From a food safety point of view from our end, any venison that we get donated, whether it be from the commercial hunting guides or from mums and dad hunters, we just go, look, if you wouldn't eat it, don't give it to us. Because all that'll mean is if that gets into a batch of mince, we've got to dump the batch of mince. And then we've all wasted our time. So as much as we do quality check the meat as we mince it and before we deliver it, we don't get that much crap in the meat, if you know what I mean.
Yep. No, that's excellent. I mean, that common sense approach, I think that's what it comes down to. If you wouldn't eat it yourself, then don't donate it. And, everyone should be pretty right.
And a bit of personal responsibility all through the chain is refreshing.
Well, yeah, I think too, the hunters that genuinely want to be able to share and do this, even on a small scale for their own farm or farms they hunt on or whatever, they get it. They don't want to keep all the decent cuts and give you the shit. They often will get like a bag of venison, we'll pick it up and it'll be all backstays. So happy days, we sort through it. We very rarely get the situation that people have put a bag of all blood clots and bruises and bullet holes and put it there for Hunters for Hope to pick up. All of the local hunters that donate venison, if they drop it off to one of our freezers, they've got to put their name and phone number on each and every bag they deliver. So we do that as twofold. That way we can actually keep track of quality. And if someone's persistently putting rubbish in there, we can have a chat with them about it. But it's also when we process a run of mince and Joe Blow from wherever down the road, we try and recognise that on Facebook. One thing that we have found is people love to give and they love to share, but they like to be recognised for it.
No such thing as anonymous giving.
No.
Which is fine. At the other end of this, there's thousands of families who obviously are struggling to put food on their table who are grateful recipients. What sort of feedback have you had from them?
It's incredibly humbling. I suppose from the position of Adam and myself with Hunters for Hope, we've got to see the hunters that are donating the venison, but also the community groups and the Salvation Army and the St Vincent de Paul and the soup kitchens and that sort of thing that are using our venison. And even people at that level get emotional about receiving protein because they just can't get it. We've actually had the very fortunate opportunity to go along to a community meal that they do at the Hope Community Trust, and they call it Community Kai. Kai is a Maori word for food. And they've served dishes up using our venison, and we've met some of the people that have come in for those meals. It blows you away. It really does, like how genuinely appreciative they are. So I think the problem is a lot broader than what people realise. It's not the unfortunate people that are on beneficiaries or solo parent families and that sort of thing. There's a lot of people now on what they call the working poor. Both parents are working, but there's just not enough money to make ends meet. So when we get the opportunity to meet these people, we jump at it because as I've said before, it's bloody good for the top 2 inches.
Fantastic. You two blokes got anything else for Stu?
Oh, I'm a bit stunned.
It's
we're in the habit of putting some of these deer into holes and pushing dirt over the top of them when we could be feeding hungry people, and it's heartbreaking for us to do that, but we haven't got much choice at the moment.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see if there could be an organisation brought together so there was actually no one person to prosecute and go, so Hunters for Hope in Victoria, say, just for argument's sake, we've donated 10 tonne of venison mince. Who's in charge? Nobody. Who are you going to prosecute? Sorry, I probably shouldn't talk about that.
I love New Zealand.
Yeah, but it's I sort of feel that if, as a human being, if you're in a position that you are able to give back, then you have to. It's just being a good human being. Like for us, it's really cool to be involved in Hunters for Hope and do what we do, but the rewards that we get far outweigh anything that we could possibly earn from charging wages. It would ruin it if we did.
Well, Steve, look, our hats off to you and to Adam and all your team. We hope to somehow emulate what you're doing here in Victoria, but certainly if there's anything we can do to help spread the word or shake a few pockets for you, please let us know. Well, there's one thing that I would sort of like to mention, and we haven't really hit on it too much, is the group of guys that do help us process the deer and everything else. It's a group of old bastards we call Dad's Army. They're a group of, they're bloody good buggers, they really are. And it started off as Adam's dad and his mates from the pub, and it's sort of grown from that, and it's a bit more than that now. But so we've called them Dad's Army. And it's not often that we'll get in touch with them. They've got their own WhatsApp chat group, and they work out, okay, we need to do this run of mince next week. Who's on board? And they'll work themselves out, and we'll, as much as we're doing the admin side of it, and we do occasionally do the mincing as well, these guys just run with it. So we couldn't do the volume we do on a regular basis without those guys helping. And you're running a men's shed with dead critters.
Well, basically it is. Yeah, it really is. But it's quite funny. I'll often stop past and go, how are things going? Do you need a hand or whatever? And they're just absolutely taking a crap out of each other. And it's great. It's these older guys, and many of them are retired or working part-time, and some of them don't have the best of health personally, but they do what they can. There's guys that can only do 2 or 3 hours on a knife, so they come and do what they can and then they go home, and that's fine. There's other guys that can take over or do a longer day, but I know Adam would want to make sure that I mention their appreciation for those guys.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, there's so many wins involved in this and so many benefits to so many people. And, yeah, you just absolutely to be congratulated. And hopefully we can emulate you to some degree and get something going here.
Well, have you guys heard of there's a mob in Sydney called Harvest for Humanity? And they're looking to do something similar to what we do. I think they're trying to navigate legislation and stuff at the moment.
We haven't, but be keen to chat with them.
Yeah, I spoke to a guy yesterday, Peter Shepherd, who's trying to get things cranked up there, and I'm not sure exactly what it looks like and all the rest of it, but it sounds something similar to what Hunters4Hope are doing over here.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, follow up. Unfortunately, in Australia, we've got all these different states and they've all got their different legislation, so that complicates things a bit. But
Steve used to be a South Australian.
Well, I still am. I'm very proud Australian. And I get ribbed about it all the time. And whenever I come home, my mates from Adelaide give me a hard time saying I sound like a Kiwi, and all the Kiwi mates over here give me a hard time saying I still sound like an Aussie, but...
so when you heard we were Victorians, you're worried that we're all convicts, or?
Oh no, Mexicans. That's right.
Just another free settler.
South of the border, yeah. But no, it would be really good if it was okay with you guys. We do need funding. We really do need people to get behind what we're doing so that we can continue to do what we do. We do have a QR code on our Facebook page that you can jump on and make a donation, to my understanding, from anywhere in the world. If somebody wanted to make a more substantial donation and get in touch with us on email, we've got a Hunters4Hope@gmail.com account. All the small donations of $5, $10, $20, whatever. If we've got 8,500 followers and everyone gives us $10, like I was saying before, it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, we will definitely be sharing all that out with this podcast.
Bloody good.
My $10 is on its way.
Yeah. Anything else from you, Steve?
I think the opportunities of what we do over here, like the basic rules that people that use the venison are aware that it's unregulated meat and they eat at their own risk. From an Australian government and state political standpoint, shouldn't that be enough? You've agreed to eat this meat. It's not regulated. You've signed a document to say it's unregulated meat. I'm eating it at my own risk. Would that be, from a public liability standpoint, wouldn't that tick it off?
We'll find out. Is the answer? Yeah.
Go to town. Yeah. But no, if any of you guys are coming over to New Zealand, whether you're going duck hunting or whatever you're doing, please get in touch. We'll catch up for a beer.
Sounds
Love
good.
to.
Sounds really good.
We like hunters and we like beer, so.
Win-win.
All right, Steve, thanks a lot. Thanks again, like I said, to yourself and Adam and your whole organisation, and thanks for your time with us today.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, thanks for joining us once again for what seems to be a pretty long podcast. So hopefully you're still with us. Little bit of stuff going on, as you'd be aware from listening today, at SSAA Victoria. Always heaps going on in the association. We've got lots of training events, so for new shooters, for more experienced shooters, for occupational shooters. Details of all of that on the SSAA Victoria website. We're going to have more to say in the next few months on silencers and on outdoor recreation, amongst many other issues. We've got our Hunters for the Hungry barbecue. The third edition of that is going to be coming up at Parliament House in November this year. So following on from that discussion with Steve today, that's part of our effort to advance that in Victoria and socialise the idea with the decision makers. And also in October at Lardner Park in West Gippsland, SSAA Victoria will be attending, along with the Deer Stalkers Club, the Wild Deer Expo, which is when we talk about the benefits that hunting brings to regional Victoria. Here's a real demonstration. So here's a hunting expo in regional Victoria, living those benefits. So look forward to speaking to as many members as we can there. My two colleagues are laughing because they'll be speaking to the members. I'll be in Vietnam on holidays with my family.
I'm glad you put that in. So I was going to ask whether you're going to join us there, Barry.
I will be there in spirit for sure, Daryl.
I'm flying back to France just to come to it. So,
and we thank you for that. I'm going to a French-speaking country. You're handing
the North part.
You're handing the baton, which I believe is a French word to me. We'll meet you at the airport.
I'm going to hand the baguette.
Hand the baguette to me, and I shall fill it with pate and chili and all sorts of wonderful stuff.
Very jealous.
All right, so thanks a lot for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all those wonderful things on whatever platform you're listening or watching this podcast on. Thank you.